The shuttle touched down with the kind of elegance only a diplomatic craft could afford, smooth, slow, and utterly unimpressed with the rocky surface of Villanine inside. Theo Maddox wiped his palms on his pants for the 5th time, pretending not to notice the way the interior lights subtly changed color in response to his pulse. Somewhere above his head, the translation AI Hallie whispered, "Please regulate emotional output. You're making the sensors itchy." Theo inhaled, adjusted the diplomatic sash he still didn't understand the purpose of, and stepped into the blinding gold atmosphere of the alien planet. Villanine looked like someone had taken a fantasy novel, a lava lamp, and a deep space geological survey and tossed them in a blender. Towering mineral spires shimmered with magnetic dust. The sky pulsed in layered hues of violet and bronze, and everything smelled faintly of roasted almonds and ozone. He was greeted by a welcoming committee that looked like they'd stepped off the set of Space Hamlet, regal, armored, and taller than him by at least a head. Each Valerian held themselves with a grace Theo had only seen in cats and nightmare-inducing ballet instructors. And then there was her. Lyra stood slightly apart, wearing matte black armor with veins of something pulsing through it. Theo assumed it was either ceremonial energy or mood lighting. Her eyes were silver, cold, unreadable. Her skin looked human, save for the sheen of fine particles embedded like constellations beneath the surface. But it was her ears, long, sloped elegantly back, like someone had carved crescents from polished stone, that really sold the alien thing. She did not blink. Theo cleared his throat. Greetings on behalf of the United Earth Federated States. I come in peace, although my stomach packed a few diplomatic snacks just in case." No reaction. He smiled weakly. "I'm Theo Maddox, linguist, diplomatic cultural bridge, sometimes reluctant karaoke participant." Still nothing. Lyra inclined her head a fraction, which Hallie interpreted with a ping. Acknowledgement received. "She finds you visually fantastic," Theo muttered. "That's how I always want to be described on dates and job interviews." A formal procession led him into a crystalline structure that, despite looking like an intergalactic ice sculpture, somehow maintained a cozy room temperature. Theo tried not to gawk as living panels adjusted their shape to his body heat, creating subtle nooks of privacy and perfectly timed ventilation. It was like walking inside a spa staffed by psychics. Lyra, apparently his designated bodyguard and liaison, said nothing during the first hour of negotiations. She stood beside him like a particularly elegant statue with built-in death capabilities. Every time Theo reached for his translator cuff, she narrowed her eyes just a twitch, but he felt like she was assessing the tensile strength of his bones. The Valerian Council was composed of 7 elders, each more ornamented than the last, who spoke in overlapping tones that Hallie scrambled to untangle. The negotiations were dense, formal, and, let's be honest, maddeningly slow. Midway through a particularly confusing clause about alliance rights and mutually agreed interspecies breeding protocols, which Theo hoped was metaphorical, he leaned toward Lyra and whispered, "Okay, but if I mess up again, I'll just marry you and claim sanctuary. Sound fair?" He grinned. A joke, a good one, probably a 7 out of 10, if he was grading on nervous energy. Lyra turned. Her gaze didn't flicker, didn't soften. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and clear. "I accept." Theo blinked. "Wait, what?" "I accept your proposal of union," she said, as if confirming a coffee order. "We are now bonded under Valerian Rite 3, subsection honor blood." One of the council members let out a pleased chirrup. Another stood and clapped once ceremonially. Hallie chimed in. "Congratulations. You are now recognized as a bonded mate by Valerian law. Shared benefits include joint citizenship, access to warrior archives, and ceremonial burial rights. Please update your will." Theo's brain made a noise like a dial-up modem from the 1990s. No, wait, that was a joke. I wasn't serious," he hissed. Lyra tilted her head. "Your thermal signature suggested sincerity. Your gaze was steady. You did not avert your eyes. These are the traits of a Valerian vow. Well, on Earth, these are the traits of someone trying not to pass out from embarrassment." The council seemed pleased. A few murmured about symbolic unity and strategic fertility. Someone presented him with a ceremonial blade etched with his Lyris biometrics. Theo accepted it because he didn't want to be rude. "So," he said, heart pounding, mouth dry, "does this come with a prenup or just immediate space?" "Taxes." Lyra didn't answer. She merely stepped closer within breath range. Theo noticed she smelled like cool metal and something like wild mint. She spoke softly. "I will protect you." Theo nodded. "Numb. That's good. I'm very protectable." The rest of the evening passed in a kaleidoscope of ritual, gestures, biometric scanning, and an uncomfortable moment where Theo had to stand on a levitating disc while a Valerian elder sang at his blood. By nightfall, he was exhausted, confused, and sharing a quarters suite with Lyra, who calmly laid out her weapons beside the bed and asked if he snored. Only when dreaming of commitment, he muttered. She didn't laugh. Theo lay there in the dim golden light, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what exactly had happened. Hallie blinked into view from the corner, projecting a tiny hologram of a wedding certificate in Valerian script on the plus side. The AI whispered, "Her clan has excellent dental coverage." Theo groaned. He had come to Villanine to bridge cultures. Instead, he'd accidentally married a warrior princess with the emotional expression of a sentient obsidian blade, and somewhere, deep inside, a part of him he usually kept distracted with bad puns and iced coffee whispered, "What if this isn't a mistake? What if this is exactly what you needed to shake your orbit?" He told that part to shut up, but at did and single quotes t. Theo woke to the unmistakable sound of metal being sharpened against stone. It had a rhythm to its low deliberate, not aggressive exactly but just threatening enough to discourage sleeping in. He cracked one eye open. Lyra was seated cross-legged on the floor, a long curved blade resting across her lap, its edge catching the amber light filtering through the crystalline windowpanes. Her armor was gone, replaced by some kind of soft, ceremonial wrap that looked like it had been designed by a fashion-conscious warlock. Her long ears twitched faintly, as if catching sounds from a dimension he wasn't invited to. "Morning," Theo said, voice gravelly, "or whatever unit of time we're pretending is morning on this planet." Lyra didn't look up. "It is the cycle of rekindling. Light returns. Cool, so like a Valerian brunch hour." "Got it." He rubbed his face and sat up, wincing at the stiffness in his neck. The bed was deceptively soft, like sleeping on a hug from someone you didn't fully trust. A small orb hovered into the room and chirped at him. It projected a list of obligations in midair: blood oath renewal, nutrient harmony feast, bond confirmation, ritual optional but strongly encouraged. Theo squinted. "What is a nutrient harmony feast, and do I need to wear a tie?" Lyra paused, her blade sharpening. "It is a ceremonial breakfast where we consume our preferred proteins while discussing the moral weight of union." "Right, so, like eggs and couples therapy." She frowned, which on her face looked like someone moved to pixels in the wrong direction. Theo rose and padded toward the console near the door, still marveling at how every surface responded to proximity: smooth crystal shifting to become textured grips, drawers unfolding like polite origami. He reached for the interface. Hallie's voice, still smug from last night, whispered from the wall. "Would you like a bonding meal recommendation? Valerian custom suggests sharing something gelatinous." "Hard pass," he muttered. Lyra stood. She moved with the same casual menace of a jungle cat that had taken yoga classes. "You must eat. Ceremony requires clarity of thought and minimal trembling. I only tremble during tax season." They made their way through the grand hall, accompanied by floating drones broadcasting soft harmonics. Other Valerians watched them with a mixture of reverence and concern. Like Theo was a very well-dressed dog wearing glasses. At the feast table, various dishes blinked at him. One wobbled ominously and let out a soft hiss. Lyra stabbed it, nodded approvingly, and passed him a serving. "So, what exactly happens if I offend the food?" he asked. "It will attempt escape. I feel like Earth dating apps missed that feature." They ate. Or rather, Lyra consumed her meal with the grace of a monk performing ritual. Theo poked at his with the cautious diplomacy of someone handling alien sushi prepared by a philosopher. Between bites, Lyra spoke. "You are not what I expected. I get that a lot. I studied human diplomats before your arrival. They often avoid sincerity. While it's a cultural thing, sincerity is scary. We mostly communicate in sarcasm and passive-aggressive birthday cards." She tilted her head, considering. "Then your proposal, was it a test?" Theo froze with a piece of something translucent halfway to his mouth. "No, I mean yes. I didn't think it would count." Lyra watched him for a moment, then looked away. "Valerians do not test with words, only with blade or mind." "Right, I've noticed that sarcasm doesn't quite land here. You are difficult to read. But you do not lie with your eyes." Theo swallowed hard, unsure if that was romantic or vaguely threatening. Probably both. The rest of the morning involved a guided tour of Valerian cultural institutions. They visited the Hall of Echoing Promises, an acoustically engineered chamber where couples whispered their intentions, and the walls remembered them. Theo, trying to keep things light, said, "I promise not to leave the toilet seat up." The chamber repeated it in an eternal loop with disturbing reverence. Next was the Bond Archives, where ancient unions were recorded in crystal. Each couple's history glowed within a translucent cube, showing key moments in animated silhouette. Lyra touched a panel and her own lineage appeared: generations of warriors, bonded not by accident but by feats of strength, strategy, or shared visions during psionic storms. Theo's cube was blank. He tapped it. Nothing happened. Hallie helpfully explained. "Your bonding was registered posthumously after a joke. The archive is unsure how to interpret this data." Lyra didn't laugh, but her ears twitched again as the sun's cycle ended. They returned to their quarters. Theo slumped on the edge of the bed, exhausted by ceremonial interpretation, empathic architecture, and the general feeling of being someone's weird intercultural experiment. "Okay," he said, rubbing his temples. "Let's talk, Warrior 2, whatever I am." Lyra sat beside him. "I wasn't mocking you. I just unearthed. We use humor to manage anxiety. It's like a pressure valve. Sometimes we joke about serious things because they matter." I understand," she said softly. I have observed your species laugh when overwhelmed. You call it losing it. It is inefficient but oddly effective. Theo turned to her. And I get that you take words seriously. I'm just asking. Can we figure this out without a tribunal or an accidental blood duel? Lyra hesitated. Then, in a voice that might have passed for gentle, would you prefer to nullify the bond? He didn't answer right away. Instead he looked at Hareli, looked at a strange stillness in her, the strength hidden behind restraint, the quiet weight of expectation she wore. Like a second skin. No, he said. I don't want to break it. I just want to understand it first. For a second, just a flicker, something shifted in her expression. Then we begin tomorrow, she said, with the dowry. Wait, there's a dowry. Yes, you must receive the items of union. Theo sighed. Let me guess. One of them's alive. Lyra nodded. Very. Theo flopped back onto the bed, arms spread. Space marriage is so much more complicated than Earth Tinder. From the corner, Hallie added dryly, at least this one comes with health coverage. And a free plasma spear. He groaned on tomorrow. Apparently he was getting married again, officially, possibly to a plasma spear. The dowry arrived in 3 separate hover crates, each humming ominously as they floated into Theo's quarters at dawn. One of them pulsed faintly with a soft blue glow. Another made a squelching sound whenever someone got too close. The third simply hissed once, when touched, and then went very, very still. Theo stared at them with a towel over his shoulder, hair still damp from his awkwardly powerful sonic shower. Why do I feel like one of these is going to be my new roommate? Lyra didn't look away from her datapad because one of them as a soft chirp came from the blue glowing crate. It wobbled, rose a few centimeters higher, then gently tilted toward Theo. See, he said, pointing. That's a crate with emotional needs. It is Gronk, Lyra replied flatly. It has already chosen you. Theo's, I twitched. That's a name. It named itself after sensing your neural resonance. It responded most to your subconscious transmission of the word ugh. Gronk approximates this. The crate popped open with a quiet hiss, releasing a puff of lavender mist and something that resembled a sentient stress ball with stubby pseudopods and 2 large blinking eyes. It slurped forward, squeaked in excitement, and promptly launched itself onto Theo's chest. He staggered back. Okay, WOW, hello. Yes, I see you. You're very present. The blob purred like a gelatinous kitten and pulsed in rhythm with Theo's heartbeat. It has bonded, Lyra said simply. It is now part of the dowry. You will feed it thoughts. Theo's face twisted. I'm sorry, did you just say? Feed it thoughts, positive emotions. It thrives on those. Negative ones cause it to replicate unpleasant sounds. As if on cue, the blob emitted a near-perfect imitation of Theo's earlier groan. Gronk, Theo muttered, gently prying it off his chest. You're lucky you're cute. The second crate opened to reveal a memory crystal the size of a football, etched with swirling inscriptions. Lyra lifted it reverently and placed it between them. This contains the history of my lineage. Battle cries, visions, dreams, our code. The crystal lit up with a soft chime, projecting a scene in shimmering light. A younger Lyra, fierce and bloodied, standing alone against a phalanx of armored figures twice her size. She did not retreat. Theo whistled. So, your family history is basically a sci-fi action trilogy. Lyra didn't smile, but her eyes warmed slightly. We are known for endurance. Theo watched as more images appeared, generations of her kin standing vigil, fighting beside allies, training in solitude. But at the end, the crystal showed Lyra alone, walking away from her clan, carrying a staff instead of a blade. He glanced at her. Exile choice, she said quietly. They wished to fight. I wished to change. Theo nodded, surprised by the sudden ache in his chest. Yeah, families can be great at misunderstanding what matters. The third crate opened with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a sleek, handcrafted plasma pike with Theo's name already engraved along the shaft in Valerian script. He picked it up. It was oddly light, perfectly balanced, and radiated a soft hum, as if it was trying to introduce itself. Am I supposed to know how to use this? He asked. It is biometrically linked to your nerve field, Lyra explained. You will intuit its use. Theo gave it a cautious swing. It responded with an elegant arc of light and a sharp whoosh, slicing the edge of a decorative curtain clean off. Okay, that's not terrifying at all. From the corner, Hallie chimed in. Note, accidental activation of plasma weapons inside. Living quarters will void your damage deposit. The rest of the day passed in preparation for the formal dowry exchange ceremony. Apparently, they weren't done until Theo had presented her with something in return, something that represented his essence. He panicked for 3 solid hours. You want me to give you what, my Netflix password? A mixtape? He asked, pacing. I didn't bring any heirlooms. The most valuable thing I own is a limited edition Xeno ramen mug that changes color with heat. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Then offer me something you value that no one else does. That stopped him. Cold. He thought for a long time. Then he disappeared into his travel pack, rummaged, and returned with a worn folded piece of paper. He held it out silently. Lyra took it, unfolded it carefully. On the page was a messy drawing in crayon, childish, bright, featuring a stick. figure version of Theo holding hands with an older woman and standing next to a rocket ship. My mom made me promise I'd keep that, he said softly. Drew it for me when I was 6. Said it was proof I could go anywhere and still belong somewhere. Lyra looked at the paper for a long time. Then, without a word, she folded it with care and tucked it into the lining of her tunic. They stood like that, not speaking, while Gronk made soft purring sounds and absorbed the shared emotion like ambient soup. The ceremony that evening was blessedly short. A few ritual chants, a symbolic handshake involving psionic feedback which tingled like champagne in the brain, and the official declaration by the council that their bond had now moved from initial union to culturally enshrined. Theo celebrated by drinking something that looked like melted sapphires and tasted like memories of recess. Afterwards, as they walked back to their quarters beneath the twin moons, he said, "So, how many steps are left before we can call this a normal marriage?" Lyra considered. 5 more rites, 6 trials, 1 potential war. Theo blinked. Was that sarcasm? She almost smiled. Possibly. Gronk chirped in agreement, then burped out a perfect imitation of Theo saying, "I didn't sign up for this." Theo laughed. Maybe he hadn't signed up for it, but it was starting to feel like the kind of mistake he'd want to keep making. Theo regretted everything the moment the first camera drone entered their living quarters and said, in an unsettlingly cheerful voice, "Smile, newlyweds. The galaxy is watching." Hallie chirped from the ceiling, far too amused. "I attempted to block the media request, but unfortunately your marital status triggered Clause 9F of the Interstellar Curiosity Accord. You're now legally considered culturally fascinating." Lyra, seated at the small meditation table, didn't blink. "Is this the reality archive Earth favors?" "It's not ours," Theo muttered, yanking a half-sipped jacket over his shirt. "We gave up reality years ago. Now it's mostly performance art with ad breaks." The drone spun, scanned their vitals, and projected a holographic title in the air. Love Across Light Years, Episode 1, Accidental Vows. Intentional Hearts. Theo groaned. "We sound like an interspecies soap opera." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Is this another Earth ritual? Only if your ritual involves mass embarrassment and sponsors." The drone chirped. "We are now live across 3 systems. Please describe your current emotional state using only color metaphors." "I'm feeling very chartreuse," Theo snapped. The drone hummed. Intriguing interpretation, hopeful panic with undertones of digestive confusion. Later, once the crew had extracted enough footage of Theo attempting to explain the Earth concept of sarcasm using Gronk as a prop, he found himself navigating another minefield. Lyra's extended family. They arrived via transmatter gate, materializing into the courtyard in synchronized silence. 10 warriors clad in veined armor, standing like they'd stepped out of a myth. They bowed to Lyra, then they stared at Theo. He waved. "Hi, I'm the joke that stuck." One of them stepped forward, tall, grim, and wearing a gauntlet that hummed faintly with plasma or the bond. Theo cleared his throat. "The accidental bond. Yes, technically I was kidding. Legally, I am not." Another warrior tilted her head. "He smells uncertain." "That's just fear sweat," Theo offered. "It's a common Earth secretion." A third warrior approached, reaching into her belt pouch. She produced a small, glowing orb and handed it to Theo. "This is the orb of clarification. Hold it while speaking truth." He accepted it. It warmed instantly. "Okay, truth, I'm trying. I didn't expect this. I'm overwhelmed. But I'm also impressed and possibly in mild shock." The orb flickered pink. The warriors exchanged glances. One nodded solemnly. "He is sincere. Inadequate, but sincere." "The story of my life," Theo muttered. Later that evening, the formal meal began. A floating table assembled itself mid-air, and the family gathered around it in silence. Each dish came with a declaration, purpose of nourishment, symbolic intent, potential emotional side effects. One platter released pheromones designed to promote clarity in long-term relationships. Theo sneezed violently and hallucinated his 5th-grade teacher. Apologizing for calling him easily distracted, Lyra whispered, "Do not eat the clarity roots unless you're prepared for emotional transparency." Theo nudged them away. "I'm barely prepared for daylight." Halfway through the meal, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "Wow, you really did get married to a space elf." Theo turned to see Stella, his ex-girlfriend, now apparently an invited scientific observer, striding into the courtyard in full xenobotanist regalia. "Stella," she grinned. "Saw your name pop up in the interstellar gossip feeds. Thought I'd swing by and see the legendary cross-cultural mess for myself." Theo stood awkwardly. "This is not what it looks like." "Oh, I know exactly what it looks like. You panicked committed during a diplomatic incident." Classic Theo. Lyra stood, slowly. "You are a former Bond." Stella raised an eyebrow. "I'm a scientist. Former emotional entanglement. Nothing legally binding." Lyra nodded. "You are not a threat." Stella blinked. "I wasn't trying to be." "Good," Lyra said simply. "Because I would win." Theo coughed. "Okay, let's all just appreciate the fact that no one here wants an actual fight." Stella rolled her eyes. "Relax. I didn't come to reclaim anything. Just wanted to observe the strange phenomenon of Theo accidentally stumbling into something meaningful. Theo sighed. It's becoming a theme. That night, as the courtyard lights dimmed and the warriors departed in respectful silence, Theo sat beside Lyra on the rooftop balcony. Gronk slurped onto his lap, pulsing contentedly. I'm starting to think maybe I needed something to crash into, Theo murmured. Lyra tilted her head. You believe the crash was your choice? He shrugged. Maybe not the impact, but what I do after. She looked out at the twin moons, their light painting her silver eyes in shades of something softer. Valerian belief says that unions are forged not from intent, but from response. He smiled. Then maybe I'm finally learning to respond with more than panic and one-liners, Gronk chirped, then mimicked Theo's earlier voice. I'm overwhelmed but impressed. Theo snorted. Yeah, that about sums it up. Lyra leaned just slightly closer. You are adapting. He leaned back. Don't tell anyone. It might ruin my brand. Theo was trying to have a normal day. His version of normal now involved psychically bonding with a sentient blob named Gronk, fielding emotionally loaded stares from passing Valerian elders, and navigating marriage counseling, conducted via tactical combat simulations. Still, there was something comforting in the pattern of strangeness. Until the tribunal called Hallie interrupted his morning nutrient tea with the holographic equivalent of a sigh. You've been summoned to the Valerian High Tribunal for a bond inquiry. Emotional inconsistencies have been flagged. Theo stared into his mug. Is this about the thing with the pepper sauce? I said I didn't know it caused hallucinations. Hallie made a flat tone. This is about your recent statements during your documentary confessionals, specifically. Your use of the phrase, we're just figuring things out. Theo blinked. That triggered a formal investigation. Lyra stepped into the room mid-conversation, tightening a clasp on her tunic. On Villanine, uncertainty in bonded speech is considered a breach of clarity. It implies the bond lacks mutual trajectory. Theo stood. Wait, this isn't a reality show recap. They think I'm trying to opt out. They think you are not committed, Lyra said. The tribunal requires proof. Theo hesitated. Proof like what? A joint savings account, coordinated outfits. Lyra handed him a ceremonial sash. Proof of resonance. They arrived at the tribunal chamber, a vast, echoing space filled with floating glass panels, each showing shifting images of the couple's public interactions. Theo winced at one particularly unflattering moment where he was trying to teach Lyra how to wink and accidentally sneezed on her instead. The council elder floated forward. No legs, just robes and a face that looked like a disappointed nebula. Theo Maddox of Earth, your bond stands at 63% integration. Please explain your use of vague language. Theo cleared his throat. Look, on Earth, it's normal to be figuring things out. We don't always know the ending at the beginning. Sometimes we take our time. That doesn't mean I'm not serious. It just means I'm human. The elder blinked horizontally. Uncertainty is not a recognized emotional category on Villa 9. Lyra stepped forward. He processes clarity through chaos. His method is unfamiliar, but not invalid. Another panel flickered to life. It showed Theo, arms flailing, yelling, I need a minute. During a cultural dance where the floor had temporarily liquefied, Theo groaned. That was not a metaphor. The tiles turned into jelly. The elder gestured toward Lyra. Do you wish to maintain this bond, despite statistical indicators? I do, she said. He is confusing, but my blade has never learned from ease. There was a pause. The tribunal conferred through a network of glowing neural threads. Finally, the elder said, then you will undergo a clarifying trial. Theo raised a hand. I'd like to clarify that I don't like the sound of that. You will journey together to the mists of Hecarim, the elder intoned, where the landscape reveals emotional dissonance. You will not return unchanged. Gronk, from Theo's bag, let out a skeptical squeak. 2 hours later, they were dropped on the surface of a moon covered in pulsing fog and disorienting gravity shifts. The mist thickened the air, turning their breath into swirling trails of light. Theo tripped over a route that hadn't existed a second earlier. This place is alive. It reads your inner state, Lyra said, unsheathing her blade. It reacts accordingly. The ground beneath Theo's feet turned into soft sand, then suddenly into old carpet. He blinked. That's my grandmother's living room rug. A voice called from the fog, echoing in his own tone. You always joke to keep from asking what you really want. Theo froze. Did the fog just call me out? Lyra stepped closer. It is showing you your avoidance. Gronk oozed out of the pack, looked around, and projected Theo's old-school yearbook photo into the mist. The fog laughed. Theo sighed. I'm being emotionally audited by a haunted spa. They moved forward, deeper into the mist, each step forcing fragments of thought into view. For Lyra, the fog shaped into an image of her clan, watching her walk away. For Theo, it became a parade of what-ifs versions of himself that turned back instead of forward. At one point, they were surrounded by silhouettes of themselves in arguments. Lyra demanding answers, Theo deflecting with humor. Do you see? She said, this is your pattern. He looked around. Yeah, it's a lot. He took a breath. But not all of it's bad. I use jokes to survive things I don't know how to name. But I'm not joking about you. The silhouettes faded. The fog pulsed gently. Retreating, Lyra lowered her blade. That was truth. Theo touched her hand. And this is me not running. They returned to the tribunal the next day. The council reviewed their neural scans. The elder nodded. Emotional resonance increased to 89%. Integration in progress. Theo slumped in relief. So, I passed the intergalactic feelings test. You responded, that is sufficient. Back in their quarters, Theo collapsed onto the sofa. Lyra sat beside him. Your mind is exhausting. Welcome to the human condition, he said. We're like high-speed collisions in slow motion. Gronk burbled, then projected a tiny heart emoji. Theo smiled. Still want to be married to this mess? Lyra considered, yes, but I will require regular meditation breaks. Fair. He leaned his head against her shoulder. So what happens now? She touched the sash he wore. Now we learn what it means to build rather than bond. From the ceiling, Hallie whispered. Also, your joint tax registration is overdue. Theo groaned, one emotional crisis at a time. Theo was halfway through explaining the rules of Unoath's most passive-aggressive card game when Lyra tilted her head and said, we should steal a ship. He blinked. You say that like you're suggesting a weekend hike. She pointed at the glowing notification that had just appeared on the wall. Interspousal convergence, retreat, mandatory participation in 5 rites of reflective unity. Theo squinted. Are they making us go on a couples retreat? On Villa 3 during blood rain season? He stared. That sounds like the setting of a horror documentary. Exactly. By the time Hallie finished listing the health risks of blood rain, mild skin erosion, hallucinations, spontaneous existential dread, they were already boarding a diplomatic skiff under the official pretense of field study. Gronk rode in Theo's lap, humming contentedly and emitting the occasional puff of empathy mist. Their destination was an abandoned observatory on the orbiting moon of Telvandros, once used for Deep Veil stellar mapping, now repurposed as a quarantine zone for couples in psychological overload. Lyra called it neutral ground. Theo called it exactly the kind of place where romance gets rebooted or obliterated. The moon's surface shimmered with glassy ridges and magnetic storms. As they landed, the skiff's interface warned them, atmospheric interference may result in temporary memory distortion. Avoid unresolved emotional content. Theo laughed. Oh, so just suppress our entire personalities. Easy. The observatory was intact, but flickering lights glitching, gravity slightly misaligned. Doors whispered open reluctantly. They were alone. For the first hour, it was peaceful. Lyra unpacked essentials with military precision. Theo discovered a vending unit that dispensed mood-appropriate snacks and spent 10 minutes arguing with it. Gronk found a corner and proceeded to bond with a heater coil. By nightfall, the observatory hummed with low energy fluctuations, and the memory distortion began. At first it was harmless. Theo walked into a room and found himself faced with himself wearing a lab coat and arguing passionately with an invisible board. Sorry, Pass, Theo said. The grant doesn't cover cross-species marriage counseling. Lyra appeared behind him, holding a malfunctioning psionic stabilizer. I found this plugged into an emotional filter. I think this place is projecting us, Theo said, watching another version of himself on a couch, nervously practicing a proposal to a plush toy, which, frankly, feels rude. The projections grew more intense as they explored. Some rooms showed arguments they'd never had. Others replayed fears they'd never voiced. One chamber presented Lyra standing alone, bloodied, watching a starship take off without her. She didn't speak. Theo reached out. That's not real. It is one of many reals, she said. One I once believed in. Another room showed Theo at a table, surrounded by versions of his past, his mother's disappointed silence, an old professor asking why he never finished his thesis, Stella looking bored. The real Lyra stepped beside him. You carry ghosts. He rubbed his face. Earth custom. We drag them everywhere like overpacked luggage. The observatory flickered again. Lights dimmed. A voice spoke from the intercom. You're not meant for this. You make jokes because you don't know what else to offer. Theo leaned on a rail. This place is designed to unravel us. Only if there is no thread beneath, Lyra replied. They sat together in the main dome, stars rotating overhead through cracked lenses. I don't always know how to say serious things without making them weird, Theo admitted, like the words come out dressed in jokes because that's how I protect them. Lyra nodded, and I accept them as they arrive. But you must know your deflection is not invisible. Theo smiled. Good, I'd hate to think I was subtle. They were quiet for a while. Then Lyra said, what would you ask? If you trusted I would hear the question, not the joke. He didn't answer immediately. The dome buzzed softly. Gronk curled at their feet, glowing faintly. Theo finally said, do you think we'd still be here if I hadn't said it as a joke? Lyra looked at him. Yes, but I would not have said yes. That made him blink. Why? Because then, it would have been words. The joke carried truth past your own defenses. It was more honest than you knew. He let out a breath. So, the joke saved us. She touched his hand. It revealed you, not the polished version, the accidental one, the one I believed. The observatory lights brightened slightly. The air warmed. Hallie pinged. Neural readings indicate significant decrease in internal resistance. Congratulations, your shared psychic field has stabilized. You may now safely initiate joint dreaming. Theo raised an eyebrow. That's a real thing. Fellery and marital retour. Conjoined lucid sleep. Lyra stood. Come, there is a chamber for this. I swear, your people invented new forms of intimacy just to confuse Earthmen. You are not confused. You are unarmored. They lay down in a circular sleep cradle, the room slowly rotating, projecting low gravity and ambient memory cues. As Theo drifted, he felt her presence beside him, not heavy, not demanding, just there. Gronk let out a satisfied gurgle and turned translucent, revealing a slow swirl of pink and violet inside. Theo whispered into the half-dream, next time I make a joke, just remind me what it costs. Lyra, already half asleep, answered, only the truth you hide behind it. They slept, and for the first time, the observatory did not interrupt. They were still brushing sleep dust out of their eyes when the emergency broadcast flared to life. A bright red symbol pulsed across the observatory's main dome, an intricate Valerian glyph that, according to Hallie, translated loosely to "So, that diplomacy thing, it's on fire." Theo blinked at the message. We were gone for 2 days. How much trouble can a planet get into in 2 days? Hallie projected a tactical map into the air. A rogue faction from the outer orbitals has declared that your interspecies union compromises Villanine's honor and sovereignty. You are officially classified as a cultural contaminant. Congratulations. Lyra tightened her belt and stepped into the flickering light. They mean to sever Villanine from the Federation. Our bond has become symbolic, Theo groaned. I knew symbolic. Love was a gateway drug to interstellar rebellion, Hallie buzzed. As of 37 minutes ago, the opposition issued a demand. Dissolve the union or face corrective reclamation. Gronk let out a squeaky burble that sounded suspiciously like yikes. Theo looked around. All right, so we've accidentally become the face of a socio-political movement, and also maybe a war. Are we still on our honeymoon, or is this phase 2 of the Valerian bonding process? Lyra didn't answer immediately. She accessed a neural blade archive embedded in the observatory floor, retrieving a weapon that shimmered with reactive light. They will come for me, and for you, by extension. Unless we move first. Theo raised his hand. Just for the record, I'm allergic to most types of being come for. They boarded the skiff under stealth mode, slipping into orbit beneath the detection grid. Hallie rerouted through low-band diplomatic channels, transmitting non-aggressive ping signals as they glided toward Villanine's upper atmosphere. Theo looked at the swirling cloud layers of the planet below. So what's the plan? Just show up with our marriage license and ask them nicely not to start an ideological war. Lyra adjusted the ship's vector. We go to the assembly. If we do not define our union ourselves, they will define it for us. Gronk squished onto the dash and projected an emoji that was either determined or deeply constipated. Hallie chirped. Arrival in 15 minutes. Warning, 2 orbital patrols have marked your transponder as irregular. Suggest you make your union more visually intimidating. Theo frowned. Do we have banners or matching armor? Something to scream, don't mess with us. We cuddle aggressively. Lyra reached into the side panel and pulled out a ceremonial cloak, dark as vacuum, stitched with her clan's seal. She handed it to Theo. It is woven with microfibered intimidation. Do I need to growl while wearing it? He asked. Slipping it on if it helps, she said. The skiff descended into the heart of the city-state, where the Valerian assembly hall floated above a sea of magnetic fields. The building pulsed with indigo light, its walls semi-transparent, showing flashes of figures inside, arguing, some calm, some panicked. One very large one attempting to eat a gavel. Theo stepped forward, cloaked, standing beside Lyra. The atmosphere shimmered as they entered the chamber. The murmur stopped. A counselor stood. You were summoned, not welcomed. Theo cleared his throat. Hi, nice to see you too. I brought snacks, also marriage. That's sort of the topic, right? Another counselor, older and draped in ceremonial cables, glared at them. You mock the rites. Your presence has fractured protocol. You turned union into parody. Lyra stepped forward. He did not mock, he misstepped, and I did not hesitate to meet him there. Theo nodded. Listen, I get it. I'm not traditional. I panic proposed with a joke and fell in love through misinterpretation. But here's the thing. Love is a language we're both still learning, and we're fluent in trying. A younger counselor frowned. Trying is not enough. You must exemplify, Hallie buzzed in Theo's ear. Initiating formal petition protocol. You must present evidence of transformative unity. Theo blinked. How do I do that? Show them my browser history. Lyra stepped beside him, and without warning, extended a hand. He took it. The chamber dimmed as they joined. Biofields triggered a feedback resonance, an unplanned side effect of their time in the mists of Heckering. A pulse of shared memory exploded outward, bathing the assembly in emotional telemetry. They saw flashes, Theo handing over the crayon drawing, Lyra whispering, I will protect you, Gronk belching a heart-shaped cloud after hearing Theo say, I don't want to break it. The room was quiet when it ended. A moment later, someone sneezed. Another counselor coughed. That was highly unorthodox. The eldest stood, and yet, undeniable, there was a pause. Then, the Union stands. Let no further protest question its truth. Theo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. We're not contaminants. You are precedent, the elder said. Theo looked at Lyra. I think we just got promoted from married to symbolic diplomatic entity, she replied. I preferred the part where we were alone on the observatory. Same, he said. No offense to nation building, but it's exhausting. Gronk chirped in agreement, then immediately sneezed on the council floor. Hallie pinged. Congratulations. You are now classified as a stabilizing myth. Try not to ruin it. Theo groaned. No pressure. Right. Lyra looked up at the stars pulsing beyond the translucent ceiling. Let them watch. We know who we are. He took her hand. Yeah, we do. Kind of terrifying, isn't it? She smiled for real this time. Only when it's honest. The wedding invitation came 3 weeks after the diplomatic summit ratified Villanine's full Federation status filed. Ironically, under personal event, low urgency, which Hallie took as a subtle insult. Theo stared at the glowing text, then blinked. We're getting married. Again Lyra looked up from calibrating her blade, this time formally. With shared consent and mutual choreography, Theo raised an eyebrow. Wait, there's dancing. There is always dancing, she said, very seriously. Possibly gravity inversions. Gronk, now wearing a tiny ceremonial sash of his own, burbled enthusiastically and tried to eat the invitation. They were standing in the shared quarters of their newly appointed diplomatic residence, a fusion of Valerian stone architecture and Earth comfort modules. It had windows that adjusted to mood and chairs that politely recalibrated to whatever emotional weight you were carrying. Theo had tested it by sitting down after a hard call with his mum, and the chair had offered him cocoa. Not metaphorically actual cocoa. Things had changed. The once Naval routines now had a rhythm. Lyra still sharpened her blades before breakfast, but now she did it while humming the Earth theme song from Inspector Timewatch, a show Theo had insisted was essential cultural research. Theo, meanwhile, had taken to practicing basic staff forms badly on the terrace, usually under the supervision of a small or critical Gronk who chirped disapprovingly every time he dropped the weapon. He dropped it a lot, but he no longer felt like he didn't belong. And maybe that was the point. The final ceremony took place not in a temple or council hall, but on the bridge of the very first Valerian Earth joint exploration vessel, still in dry dock, still experimental and currently hovering 3 feet off the ground because someone had triggered the antigrav by leaning on the control panel. I didn't touch anything, Theo insisted, floating sideways in his formal tunic. You breathed near it, Hallie noted. Which, for you, is usually enough. The ship named Concordia by unanimous vote, then renamed Slightly Married by Theo as a joke, then renamed back after Lyra's glare short-circuited. A console was chosen for symbolic reasons. New paths, shared journeys, a literal launch point. The guest list included council members, a delegation from Earth, 3 of Lyra's cousins, all of whom still referred to Theo as the soft one, and 1 very bored stellar archivist who kept muttering about this being psychologically relevant but culturally inefficient. Stella showed up too. She wore a sleek diplomatic uniform and brought Theo a piece, lily grown in a zero-gravity greenhouse. It thrives in inconsistent environments, she said with a smirk. Like you. Theo grinned. Nice to see you didn't try to duel anyone this time. I was warned, she said, nodding toward Lyra. Also, Gronk bit me once. I got the message. The actual ceremony was short. Valerian rites didn't require vows, only contact, hands pressed, foreheads aligned, hearts measured, in sync through microfield resonance. The onboard AI played a song composed from their combined neural patterns, a blend of Theo's scattered melodies and Lyra's calm, crystalline focus. Theo couldn't understand it logically, but it made his chest feel like sunlight at the end. Lyra looked at him and said, now the bond is chosen. He smiled. You know, when I first said it, I didn't think I meant it. I know, she replied. That is why I waited for when you did. Gronk, seated proudly on a hover pedestal between them, projected fireworks in a short montage of Theo falling over things. After the ceremony, the assembly presented them with a gift, joint command, of Concordia on its maiden voyage. A year of exploration beyond the known systems, observation, diplomacy, peace-building, an excellent opportunity to test the long-term viability of emotional compromise in confined space, Hallie noted. And also whether two people who share everything can survive each other's sleep patterns. Theo leaned back in the command chair. I snore like someone negotiating with reality. She hums battle chants in her sleep. We'll be fine. The ship launched to cheers and glittering magnetic flares. As they cleared orbit, Theo looked out at the stars not as something unreachable, but as something that finally felt like home. Later, in their shared quarters, he sat beside Lyra, watching their trajectory adjust toward an uncharted sector, marked only as Velum 23. Somewhere out there was a planet made entirely of crystalline fungi. Somewhere else, a cloud of intelligent gas, debating theology with passing comets. I used to be afraid of permanence, he said, like if something lasted, it would trap me. Lyra traced her finger along the viewport. And now it feels like we're building something with movement, not a cage, a ship. She turned to him. Then let us see how far it sails. Theo grinned. Captain and Bladewife. Not bad for a guy who once proposed by accident. Gronk burbled from his sleeping dock. Then, without prompting, he emitted a quiet phrase, his first actual word since bonding. Stay. Theo looked at Lyra. They both nodded. And for the first time since their strange, sideways journey began, neither one of them flinched.